You will understand the spirit of the century. You will know how speedy the human mind is and how the human mind is not ready to utilize anything. It wants to enjoy something. That is according to the ancient centuries. But is not able to enjoy. Because of the tremendous speed it is experiencing, the human mind wants to possess something because of the habit of the previous centuries. It is not able to possess because it has no time to possess. The individual tries to have an importance in achieving something because it was the habit of the past. But there is no such possibility in the present. Every individual is expected to contribute the best of what he can, and his contribution will be accepted. His special presence will not be noticed. That is the spirit of the future. But the mind is not very much ready to accept it. Because naturally, when we want to contribute something valuable to the society, we expect some recognition and some importance because it has been our habit during the past centuries. So at every step, the present humanity feels disappointed, a bit dejected and restless, and sometimes a bit impatient and vindictive. This is the mind of the changing human. If we apply this formula to the educational institutions of the past, present and future, we will understand some wonderful things. Educational institutions started as families in the previous ages. The parent was the head of the family. He was having some crafts and arts with him, which were of real use to others. That is really useful to the society. And he used to practice them and make them hereditary. He taught them to his children and wife. And the children taught them to their children. Each art and each craft was multiplied by parents to the in course of time. The families of each art and each craft grouped together and formed into a colony of artists who followed it as a profession. And we have little villages for some time in the past. Each village having a profession as the main keynote, the other professions being subordinate. We had a cluster of such villages forming into one group. Gradually, there came the necessity of public schools. So, from the level of hereditary and family education, it has taken a shape of a public institution where a group of artisans and professional people were taken as professors or teachers, and the children of the families were taken into the group. But still, the group of professors and the students lived only as families. So we had the family type of commune institutions for some centuries. Afterwards, there came a time when educational institutions were made professional because the government have taken a different shape. When towns and cities began to exist, there came the necessity of professional educational centers, and gradually education became a profession. people of all professions were segregated from their professions, from the operative education to the speculative education. So we had the two types of thinkers separating, the operative philosophers and the speculative philosophers of every subject. And this necessitated a non-practical and more theoretical education. For example, we have the professional agriculturist of the previous centuries and the agricultural professor, the professional gardener and the professional botanist and the agricultural botanist. Like this, we have everything divided into two bifurcations. The next step is what we have seen in the previous 2 centuries. That is, gradually educational centers became temples of commercialization. So, from the aspect of the religious and the spiritual way of looking at an educational center, we made a temple of educational trade. So there is the economics temple and the commercial temple, which necessitated the political temple also in the university. This change has taken place during the previous 1 century. Now we have come to a point of crisis. Real education is with people individually who know how to do things. And the educational institutions have something academic. Unfortunately, it has become less and less practical. So, if we now try to understand the two aspects, we find people having real education with them in the form of their own professions and their own goodness to serve the society with their professions. People who have the art of mutual understanding and mutual helping. So education and spiritualism has become personal. The educational trade has become institutional. Now the next phase has to take place. In the meanwhile, education has taken a political educative trend, and we have the change of industrialization and the changes in the society according to it. Human values changed a lot due to industrialization. Institutions are misunderstood as more important than individuals. The whole span of the individuals is being spent for the institutions and political ideologies. So the existence of the individual has become less. So the significance of life has become less important. What is the taste to live? What is it that makes life happy? What is the attraction for us to live? It has gone down. Life has become a busy activity from morning to evening for something which we do not understand properly. Age is spent for that something which is not properly understood. Whereas life is more valuable than everything. Everything is understood as more valuable than life now. Instead of contributing everything for life, we are spending life for everything. And life in total has become a race. We are running the race more and more speedily daily. Now, once again, the time has come to consider everyone is feeling in his or her mind. What is the meaning of life? What for we are living so busy? Is it life that is really important or something else? If life were to be more important than any other thing, then human life is a temple. If the money we earn were to be more important than life, if the sense of false security for which we are spending our life were to be more important, if something which we do not understand were to be more important than our life, if something which we call education were to be more important than the health of the child, which is many times the same when we see nowadays. When a child is having some health deficiency, when he is advised to take some rest and have good time for 1 or 2 years for health reasons, we see how the parents feel miserable of it. And we see many times how the boy, the student himself feels miserable and neglected, that he is not allowed to continue his studies for his health reasons. Really something very seriously wrong in our understanding. Had we properly understood the relative values of life, we would have been very happy as parents to stop the education of the boy for 2 years or 3 years and make him more healthy and happy and make him understand that it is real education, instead of asking the boy to be anxious of something which he calls education. So it is a mirage towards which we are running. It is something which we cannot understand, for which we are running. Very soon the younger generation is going to understand that the values for which we are running are only the devil. The science of health about which we are teaching in the colleges, it belongs to the student first, and then it belongs to the academic education next. And that the student has to study the science of health with himself as the laboratory, not to sacrifice his health to know what science of health is. Such a radical change is going to occur within the next 50 years. Because lack of common sense cannot exist for a long time in the name of intelligence and new age. New age should open new dimensions of common sense, not only new dimensions of science or new dimensions into the other planets. We are going to understand very shortly that we have much to do on this planet before we can boast of going to other planets and spending millions of dollars to go to Moon and Mars and some nonsense. And the compartmentalization of subjects in education will also go away. Since the political situation is showing a crisis ahead, it is quite evident from the present situation that very big nations will be having very little units of administration. The big power centers of the world are not going to exist anymore because it is becoming more and more impossible day by day for the human beings to make a government for about 50,000 kilometers or 70,000 kilometers, about which we are experiencing the evils. The time has come when colonization and politicalization is going to end. The so-called advanced nations and the so-called backward nations are going to have a good communion, either through a crisis of war or through some understanding and peace. It is quite evident that the present situation cannot continue. So we have very small administrative units of all nations. The face of the globe and the dimensions of the atlas are going to have stunning changes. We don't find one country with one name of a big, very vast area. A vast area in the name of one nation, having little administrative units as many as 1,000 or 2,000. So educational institutions are to be adjusted accordingly. Now, even now, it has become almost impossible for people to go to their offices and work and return to their homes in some places. The time factor and the distance factor is rendering things impossible. And experiments are already started for computerizing the work required. Okay. Allowing groups of professional people having their own houses and offices combined. Certain offices and their residences also combined. So that the parents have the office and the home also at the same time with the children. The children are under the care of the parents henceforth. For example, a group of 50 houses as a colony of one office. For example, the electricity of the whole city. The one or two families among the 50 families will be looking after the food, clothing and the bath of the children of all the families. And almost many of the ladies of the families, they work as the professors of the children. So once again, we are going to have the home education centers with perfect educational system computerized. The parents themselves are trained in the direction to train a group of children. So once again, we have the ancient most system with the modern amenities. So common sense extended into utility. And along with this, if we add the spiritual dimension also, then we have the telepathic rapport added to the educational facility. When telepathic professors are being trained in the future, when parents and children are educated during sleep through a distance, and after some time they understand the various subjects through what is called the system of impression, the method of impression. That is, when people are sleeping, the subjects are taught to the students without the burden of the language. Directly a seed thought is dispersed among the children, and the thought begins to germinate in the children, and the children develop with those thoughts. The basis of their education is common sense, practicality, and spiritualism. They will understand what we can call the science of the human being, the science of the human vehicles, how the vehicles are working, how the physical and the subtler vehicles are in existence, how the spiritual psychology gives him the understanding of utilizing his own vehicles, how the physical vehicle is to be utilized, how the intelligence and logic are to be utilized, and how these things are to be coordinated. It is only the utility of the society that is taken as a keynote to ennoble the individuals by growing their awareness from the physical to the subtler vehicles. For example, the physical body is utilized to train the senses and the mind. The mind and the intelligence are utilized not for a sense of achievement, but a sense of service, a sense of coordination. If there are 50 children, each child is trained to help the other 49 children. What each child can do for the other 49. What the 50 children can do to the elders. What they can do to the houses. What they can do to the streets. How they can contribute to the neatness and the sanctity of the village. How the architecture and the engineering of the village construction is improved. How the communications are improved. These are considered to be the real aspects of education. And these aspects, when developed in the vehicles, it is called spiritualism. When these aspects are developed for the outward help, it is called social education, the economics of time and the opportunities. So a socio-economic basis for spiritual living will be worked out, and the much mystic aspect and much emotional aspect of the present spiritualism will go away, and the more practical aspect will be coordinated. The skeptic side of modern science will be removed, and the meaningless, splendorous experiments of going into the other planets, etc., will be for the time being removed. Consolidation of power will be removed. Distribution and decentralization will be the keynote of the future education. This is what I understand about the future educational institutions. And essentially the family forms the first unit of education. And then the parents become the first group of students. They receive the education from the pioneers, whom we call the masters of wisdom. For example, the work of the Tibetan master Dwalpo, with the help of the works of the Alice A. Bailey, and there are 4 or 5 such spiritual organizations continuously working now, producing their own literature in a consistent way. Textbooks will be constructed on practical basis, the keynote being utility to the society and service irrespective of remuneration. These become the keynotes of the future education, when automatically the problems will be solved by themselves. The children will understand that there are no problems in human life, and all the problems that are existing are man-made. Because in nature there are no problems. To the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom there are no problems. To the human kingdom, if there are problems, it is the human beings that have made problems. And hence, the children themselves will teach us after some time that it is for us to live a simple and direct life with the spiritual awareness of all the finer planes of our existence. And if at all we are fond of having any problems, there will come a time when we will be segregated. A land is separated for those who want problems and wars. That is what is going to happen in the near future. And if we prove our fitness, we can provide such institutions to our children and grandchildren. And also the continuity of thought through generations will be understood as valuable. The loss we have incurred by cutting off the continuity will also be understood. When the parents are working in an office, when the children are being sent to residential schools, when the grandparents are going to die in the cellars of old men's houses, there is no continuity of national consciousness to any nation. The child, after a certain time in the school, is a foreigner to the parents, and to the grandparent is an animal to the grandchild. So there is no understanding between the grandparent and the grandchild. If at all there is an understanding between the children and parents, the understanding is rather competitive and misunderstanding and not a proper understanding. Because the children are living more in the residential institutions than with the parents. Such a dirty life for 100 years we have led now. And now we face the consequences. We live as a group of scorpions or snakes, whereas no nation exists. You can understand the difference when you compare France 100 years ago and France today. What an old man means by France, what a present student means by the French nation. You will very easily understand that the student has no idea of a nation at all. This is how we degenerated. We are here, a bundle of human creatures without a national consciousness. That means we have no soul consciousness.